Okay. Let's pick up and we'll start a little before we talked about last week about the mitzvah of Leisachon, and the Rambam is a bar Kabbalah. We'll see, it'll be important later. There's a Pirush Makubal from Moshe Rabbeinu, Lo Sitin Lohem Chen, that you shouldn't give Goyim or the Avodah Zarah Chen. What does it mean? Acho ish yofa tzura me'oiv de Avodah Zarah, Eno mutalonu or osalonu shenoima ze yofa toya or zel pon of yofais kamoshe is boye bigmora dilon. So now the Rambam, as we pointed out, the Rambam seems to say here that it's Dafka Avodah Zarah, and he starts before that it's Kaifrim, or if they have Avodah Zarah. In Mishnah Torah, it's not 100% clear because he says over here in Hilchos Avodah Zarah, Perek Yud Halacha Daled, v'chein also l'saper b'shmochon v'afilu lo yimakamen no'o goy zeh b'tzurasei. So it's not 100% clear that the Isa is Dafkin Kaifrim. So we have to know. Then we pointed out that the Rambam adds something over here in Perek Yud Halacha Daled. V'chein also l'saper b'shmochon v'afilu lo yimakamen no'o goy zeh b'tzurasei kal v'choy mishisaper b'shmach ma'aso ad sheyichaviv dov midivreim shenemar lo yisachonim lo yiyeh lohem chen beinecha v'bnei shegoyrem lidobek imoy v'lo mima'aso b'roim. So I would have assumed that maybe if there was or something, it's ma'aso b'roim. And where do you learn this from? So I pointed out there, but as Melech says that it's in the psukim, and this will be very important. Ki yivich Hashem Elokecha el haaretz asher ato bo Hashem el rishto, v'noshal goyim rabim. This is in Devorim Zayin, pasuk Aleph to Dalet. Mi noshal goyim rabim menecha chiti hagilgoshi hu amoiri v'aknani v'aprizi v'achivi v'ayevusi shiva goyim rabim v'atzubi meko. When the son of Hashem Elokecha lefonecho v'kisam hachrim tachrim oisom loy sichois lahem bris v'loy sichonim loy sischatim bom bitcha loy sitei lebnoi ubitcha loy sikol levanecho ki yosir es bincho me'acharai v'yovdu Elohim acherim v'chora af Hashem bochem v'yishmitcho maher. So it's ki yosir es bincho me'acharai v'yovdu Elohim acherim. So l'chera, you would assume it's something to do with Avodah Zarah, but the time of the Isa. So the question is whether Kiyosir only goes on Loisischatein or goes to the things before. And the Vodas Melech assumes that since the Ram is going with Dobek, Imo, Velumi Mas, or Veloyim, the Ram is only goes on before. So if l'chera, there's a problem of saying divrei shafach shloi b'fonav because the goyim lidobek imoy. Okay, so that we had, and then we pointed out that because of this, Achreinim do it, but it's based on Mon Shabbos starts off. The Mon Shabbos on Lamed Gimel Beis, Pasuk Rabbi Yehuda v'Omar Kamanoim Maaseim Shalom Azu Tiknu Shvokim Tiknu Gshorim Tiknu Merchatzos. So the question is Mishabeach Ma'asov? So Rabbi Yashvi asks, how does this play itself out over here? It's the chen, it's loisechonim. So he says that since the Isa is maybe you can be mechalik between an individual and a malchus. And since you can only, the problem is the Dobik is only an individual. If you're talking about a whole government, so there's no problem. But he's not sure about it, he ends up in Sochiv. Another Sefer, Divois Ariel, say maybe the Isa is only B'chayov, but if the person's dead, you're not going to be Nidbak Ito because there's no one there anymore. So he says maybe that's Shat the Gemara Soita, that the Gemara needs a separate Isa, Membeis and Membeis, of Usape B'Shevach L'Shoyim. It's a Chagoy. So after Misasa, there's no problem because there's no problem with David. That's what he suggests. Then this also can play itself out in the Gemara with the Zorah on Chafam and Alf. It's also Yushalmi. The Afra Bekiva Ra Ashes Tunis Rufus Halasha. Bocha, the high shufra bole afro. So he says, Rav oiduye who the komoide the omamar oye bris tevais oimer baruch shekocha bora boilamo. So the question is, what's the head of Rabbi Akiva? So, like we said before, that, and also, so the kavanah to mishabech the goy is not for the greatness of the goy, but to talk about the Holy HaKodesh Baruch Hu. And I assume that also would not be a reason to be dovek, and that's not 100% clear. And Yushalmi also in Avodah Zorah, loisichon loisidlechein, v'otoni ma'aseh b'gamliel, shoy metayel b'harabayis, v'oisha achas nochris, u'beirech oleho, v'chidach sh'gamliel lahabit b'noshim, el derech akmumiyos hoyiso, going ayin pasvos, whatever shehibit bo, shaloi b'toivoso, u'beirech oleho. V'loi keinom b'zeira, b'shem avira, שלא, לא יסחונם, לא יסיתנו לו עליכם, מה אומר, אבסקטנו, לא אומר אלו, ברוך שכך, לא בריאויס, שכך לא בריאויס נויס בעולמו, שכן רואו, אפילו חמור נואו, או גומל נואו, סוס נואו, או אם ברוך שכך לא בריאויס no, it's Bolamo. So the Yerushalmi is really answering it. It's not the beauty of the goy itself, it's the beauty of the Bris HaKodesh Baruch Hu, Kururachamo. So that I think is okay. We're okay with this. Okay, next. If you do look in the Pnei Moshe there in Yerushalmi is in Avodah Zorah, Perek Aleph Lochates, he seems to say the Avaskatno is a loshish in the Siyas Chain B'Kovod. So if it's not the Siyas Chain B'Kovod, it's not because it's you don't need Shvach Leberi Lehete, but you shouldn't be in this a losh in the Siyas Chain. So then it's nothing to do with the fact that the the Shema Yidovek, it's just, that's not Chain, the way he's learning. Because he's not talking about, it's not B'loshen Tov Kov B'Chain. It's just talking about this Bria. He says, that's he says, Loshen Shel Nesias. It's not a Loshen Nesias Chain, but Kovod, and that's the Heta. That's what he learns at Pnei Moshe. Now, okay, this is an Indian which is interesting, but I think I'd like to discuss something else I found fascinating. The question is, what about Malchus over here for this love? And one shouldn't say it's the Chalav Shein Boy Maisa, Voraya, when you mala goyim in a bowl, it's certainly a Maisa. So why shouldn't it be Malchus? Or maybe there is Malchus. But the Rambam doesn't mention Malchus here in this mitzvah, in the Ashara, which usually mentions Malchus, if there is Malchus. But even more convincing is in Perek Yud Ches. Of Hilchos Sanhedrin Halacha Daled, where the minion of the Loikim, he doesn't mention this Malchus for this Lavali Sechonim under any circumstance. So the question is, what's the scoop? Now, let me just tell you what's going to happen. I'm going to suggest a pshat, and I'm going to bring a raya for it. And I think my suggestion is pretty convincing, I think. And then I'm going to quote the Radvaz, and I'm confused by what he says, and I'll present it to you, and I'll present my confusion. That is what's going to happen now. The Rambam in Shorish Tes says that there's no Malchus for the Fnei Evil Leisite Mirsho because it's a Lav Shabbakolos. And his Loshen in Shorish Tes is with Fnei Evil Leisite Mirsho ki hu gam kein kol inyonim rabim kmo shenevaya. Says he's going to explain. Where's he going to explain? And Lois Reish Tzadites. And let's see what the explanation of Reish Tzadites is. He says in Reish Tzadites, Ish is Hilnu, Mehachshil Kitzosenu es Kitzosenu, Bietza, Vuhu Sheim Yisholcha Odom Eitza Bedovo, Hu Nifte Boy, Hu Bo'o O Ashoro Mil Ramoisai Umolahachshiroi. Aval Tiashrehu Es Adovo El Adovo Shenachshu Tovi Yosha. This is the Isa of Eitza Shena Hagenis. Giving bad advice, V'omo Yis'ale with Nevel Esitin Mirsho. Then he says, V'loshen Sifra, Lifnei Sumo Bedovo. Hoyenoitel Mimcha Eitza Al Kite Loi Eitza Shena Hagenis Loi. Eitza Shena Hagenis. V'lav Zeh Omru, the Chachmei Meseri said, Shukoilel Gamkein Mi Shiyazo Al Aveira or Shisaviv Oisa. A person's machshel someone in Aveira. Ki hu yovi o isha hu she avivro tavosoi ein sichloi. His taiva, he makes his the eyes of his seichel blind. V'chozer iver v'yifateu V'yazreu lahashlim aveira, aveirosai, or yochel sibis aveira. He helps him go and to fulfill his tibus. Ume'ela upon him omru, b'malva v'loiva b'ribis, shneim yachad oivim b'shneiv lo'isitim. He called echod mehem, ozer chaveiro v'echim lahashlim aveira. So you have two cases here. One is Eitz and the other is Timachshav Aved. So here becomes the interesting part. The Ram adds a line over here where it says, "Upashte b'kohu b'ma shezochalnu tchila." Pshuta shel mikra is Eitz. But, however, we know from this is what he says. It says like this. He says, Omru. Who's Omru? Omru is the Chachmei HaMesera, the Matiki Ashmur. Call me Shiazo Alaveiro Yisaviv, and that's the B'malva V'loive V'ribis Sheshneim Yachad Oivim Bishum V'neibus Itimush. He called Echod Mehem Ozer Chaver. So what do you have over here? You have Pshuta Shomiko, and you have a Piyush Mekubo, which is different, and together they merge as two pshatim in the lav, and the lav then is a lav shebeklolos. They ain't looking a love. That's what the Ram says. Similarly, over here, you have a lav of pshuta shel mikra, as Onkelos learns, loy serache, of loy ma'alin. And you have, as we said before, ubo hakabola loisiten lohem chen ad sheisha yofer atzura me'oivdei avodah zara eino mutalanu shenoima ze yofer. So what do you have over here? You have a pirush makubal, the different pshat. So the same way we said that if they shot him in the lav by lifnei iver, one is pshuta shomikra, and the other is a pirush makubal, we say that it's a lav shebekolos, and there's no malchus at all. It's the first min and shows chi that there's no malchus, or then kan that there's a pshuta shomikra and a pirush makubal, and there's no malchus, and that would explain very well why the Rambam doesn't quote, even though there's a possibility of be violating the Isa. Bikum Vaseh with a Maaser, there's still no Malchus because of Lav Shebekolos. And therefore the Rambam doesn't quote it in Hilchos Sanhedrin among the cases of Malchus. Because no Malchus. Now, this is my thesis, and I think that the equation to Lifnei Iver is very nice, and it's also very nice in Mishnah Torah. There's no Malchus at all. It's mamish, everything is beautiful. Comes the Radvaz. I think we mentioned, and we didn't. I think we mentioned part of this tshuva last week. Radvaz in Chelek Vov Simon Beis Alofim Reish Mem Zayin. He says you do get Malchus. You get Malchus lo sarache lahalos mirabo. He writes like this: V'chein kosa Rabbeinu v'simoni alavim Shalolochun aleim v'chein b'sefer HaMitzvos kola b'chlal alav shnei hadvorim. Simen nun, that's lav nun. V'zer l'sheni hizhirnu mechamo klal aleihem u'miliapois dovo mikol ma shemiyuchol lehem v'hi omroi loisachonim ubo hakabola loisitin lehem chen ad shimoish hazeh yofe otzura oslon loima zeh yofe atzura toya motion is boy bigmor dilon ubigmor yushalmi omru loisitin lehem chen b'loisaseh. I'm continuing reading the Radbaz. She'ika mitzvah shelo yisrachim aleim. V'imosa ma'aseh loike. V'af agav dahabi lav shebeklolis. She'ha'iklilu leisitan lehem chanoye bekalka. U'shelo los lehem matneschino. U'shelo iloima kamano akum zeh. Ikal meima midrabonenhu. V'asmachte de akro. I bought Kabbalah case. Vafilu im. So he knows the whole case, and he knows that if you have a pshuta shomikla and a Kabbalah, it's going to be a lav shebeklolis. But here, the other isur asmachte ba'almo. Vafilu im tirtza leforish disur deraisuhu mikom ein loikin ela pashti the corpse. Here he flips the whole world around and he says no. He doesn't talk about lifnei. He says if there's a pashti the crop and there's a pirush makubal or something like that, you only get malchus on the pashti the crop. The afagaf the lav shebeklolos ein loikin alav a pashi the call like ein loikin alav a pashi the call like wherever there's pashi the call, you all get malchus. How he learns the Rambam in Lifnei Iver, I don't know. And why the Rambam doesn't mention it in Hilchos Sanhedrin, we also don't know. And it doesn't mention Malchus over here, which is not the greatest raya. And I don't know how we can say it's asmach. The Rambam is a boa kabol. So these are the kashas. Vesichnit. I don't know what to say, and but I think the first approach that I suggested, I think is it fits very nicely into all and answers all the problems. Okay, now let's just point out over here that the Rambam doesn't mention in this lav the Isa of the Sina Lagoy Chanoya Bekal. In Mishnah Torah, he does quote it together with Loisachonim in Perigir Aloha Gimel and Dalet. The oddity is, and we'll talk about this not really for now, the Ram quotes it, Loisasen Nun Aleph, Shenesinas Chanoya Bekalka is a Pirush Makubal. And he says, Bo Bebeya, Bo Lono Hapirush, Loisitin Lehem Chanoya Bekalka. He quotes the Lav of yeshu Bartzech, and we'll talk about that in Mitzvah when we get to the Lav. Next, the Rambam in Mishnah Torah brings also the Isa Matnes Chinam together with the other Isum Lo Sechonim. But it's not clear in the Rambam whether the Isa is because of Lo Sechonim or there's a separate Isa say, Lageh Hashem b'shechera tidneno, v'acholo, or mochol enochli. The Rambam in Hilchos Avodah Zarah Perek Yud Halacha Daled, v'oslita lehem matnas chinam, avol noisein lageh toishav shnemo lageh Hashem b'shechera tidneno v'acholo, or mochol enochli, v'mechiru v'lo menesin. So the Beis HaLevi discusses this if you're interested in Chelik Aleph Siman Chof. But whatever you have it, one way or the other, the Ram doesn't quote this over here. So you could say that there's an Isa say of Lageh Hashem b'shechera tidneno, but the Ram doesn't count Isa say in the minyan, like he doesn't count the Isa of Mitzri v'Adoimi. So I'm not sure how great this answer is, because the Rambam has in Lageh Hashem b'shechera tidneno not only an Isa say, but a Kiyum say. If you work with this approach, it's the Isa say. Because the Ram has in Hilchos Malachim Perek Yud Halacha Yud Beis v'chein yoli shenoegim im geirei toishav b'derech eretz gmilas chasod ki Yisrael sheharionu mitzum lachiyason shene'emar lageh Hashem b'shechera tidneno v'acholo. So it means that there's not only Isurim over here, but there's also Kiyum. Okay, that is enough for here. Let's go on to the next mitzvah. HaMitzvah achas mechamishim. He she's hinu mehoishiv. And here it's in the original Judeo-Arabic. Uvdei avoid the Zorah. Bi'atzenu. So the problem is to be moishiv and even avoid Zorah in our land in Eretz Yisrael. And the Ram has a very clear tam. Today, shlo nilmad kfirasam. And that b'chira is not b'shamayim because it's b'huamo yis'ale lo yeshvu b'artzecha pen yachtiu oischa li. Kedei shelo pen yachtiu oischa li. Kedei shelo nilmad miki kfirasam. That's very good. The Rambam is very clear over here. Mehoishiv Uvdei Avodah Zarah, that the Ashara applies to all goyim who are Uvdei Avodah Zarah, and it's not dafka to the Zayin Umos. And l'cheira, the Ram learned it from a Medrash Halacha, which is the Matik Yashbur. There's a Mechilta Drab Shimei Yochoi, in Shmo is Chav Gimel Lamed Gimel, Lo Yeshu B'Atzecho, Harezo Azhora Shel Yeshivu Goy Oived Avodah Zarah B'neihem. This is foolish in the Mechilta Drab Shimei Yochoi, and that's Psach Rambam, that it's a Goy Oived Avodah Zarah. Lav Dafka Shivu Am. And also in Yereim, in Simin Shin Tezvov, Lo Yeshu V'Yatzecho, Yotzreinu Yodei Lev Adam v'Hizir v'Yois Yad Yisrael Tekifo Shleanichu Losheves Anoshim Rishoyim Umachtiei Adam Be'eretz Yisrael. He's not talking dafka about Zayin Umois. Dichsib Pas ve'elu mishpatim li'esh be'atzecha pen yachtiu oiskoli afal pishikola inyan eno medabe ela b'shiva umois kiven dichsib pen yachtiu oiskoli lomadnu sheriba kol ha'machtim. Okay, so the Rambam and the Reim, Rambam, the Mechilta, Reb Shimon Yochai, the Reim learns it because Bechilu, the Torah says the Tam, Pen Yachtiu, so Memela, it's Rabbis Kol Machtim, Slav Gafta Zayin Umois. Okay, say that. However, there are a large group of Rishonim that say this Hashorah is only on Zayin Amun. And let me go through the list. Rashi in Gittin, Mem Heim and Aleph, Tiva Maslo Yeshua V'Yatzecha, B'Shiva Umois Ksiv. To be clear in Rashi, the Asogas Haravid in Hukas Avodah Zorah Per Yud Alochavov, V'Aposik Shuhu maybe B'Zayin Umasu. You see, interesting, of Avram ben Arambam in Bereshis Lamed Vov Posik Chof Lefi Shenitmu B'Das Hatzabo Upuchon Avodah Zorah Kmo Shehoyu Achorim Yoshvei Oretz Lefi Rehizia Yis'al Hashem Yis'aleh Yis'aleh Yisrael Nis'areb B'Shim La'amimim Lo Yeshvu B'Artzecha V'Goyme Lo Yischai Kol Neshama L'man Asher Lo Yilmadu Yilamdu Estem. So Avraham is also very clear that it is Zayin Amimim. The Ramban in Dvorim Zayin Tezayin B'Tama Mitzvah Zeis Mibinei Shohoya Mitzrim V'Kananim Goyim V'Chatoim L'Hashem Yoid Moshe Omar Kimas Eretz Mitzrayim Asher Yishavte Bo Lo Yisas Kimas Eretz Canaan V'Chulei V'Hinei Rotz Hashem Shelamdu Yisrael Mimaseim V'Hichris B'Kohanim V'Hichris B'Kananim Kol Neshama V'Yischai Kol Neshama V'Omar Lo Yesh B'Atzecha. So that's also Canaanim. V'Yiz in Mitzrayim Lo Neshev Anachnu B'Artzom. The Smag also in Lav Memtes Shelo L'Hoishiv Echod Mishiva Amamin Oivdei Avodah Zorah B'Artzenu Shenema Lo Yeshvu B'Artzecha and Yachtiu Ischoli L'man Asher Lo Yilmadu Es Yilamdu Es. So here you have the problem. Since you're not allowed to leave one of the Zayin Amun alive, there's a law of L'Yischai Kol Neshama, so you have to kill him. So, what's the issue by giving you a place to live in Eretz Yisrael? So if you learn that Achrem Tachrimim is a mitzvah Milchama, and Muhammad requires melech, if you learn like that. So maybe there's no mitzvah. Because we have no melech. When you have no melech, and then there will be a lav, because you have to kill him. So what about L'Schai called the Shoma? Maybe it's not Biyodul Amisai. So maybe if it ain't Biyodul Amisai, therefore you need a separate lav of the Yeshbu Bartzech. It's not so bad. And once you're ready to say this would help you for the Ramam of like Sichos Lehem Bris. Because the Ram has a separate, the Ram learns that Sorah. It is B'zayin Amavit. Okay, next. And as we said before, the Ram says, Kadei Shalom Nilbud Mima'aseyim, Shalom Nilbud Kfirosam, the Ram learns it from Lo Yesh Be'atzecho Pen Yachtiu Oischoli, Ki Savoid Es Elohim, Ki Yeh L'chol HaMoikesh. In Shmois Chav Gimel, Lamed Gimel. The Minchas Chinuch says that this lav is noig b'zman hazeh if you're dating tkifa. So according to that, there's a big problem of renting to goyim, unless you say that it's daf goyim de avodah zarah. But that you can't do, because in L'yesh Ba'atzecho, it's very clear you need to get Tosha. We'll see about this. But I guess the Heteim should come only from the following, from if you learn that the lav is only Zayin Amamin, so you can move ahead. Okay, let's continue. Be'ilu, so there's a lav, Olo Yeshu Ba'atzecho, Pen Yachtiu Oischoli. Comes the Ram says, Be'ilu Rotzo, a goy. Now here, there's a question what the gears is in both Kapach and even Oyev, which is in Ksav. It says, V'ilu rotzo agoy la'avo b'atzei. He just wants to pass through. Eino mutalonu is there. In Ibn Tibin, it says la'avoid, la'amoid b'atzei. We don't know what that means. Just stand there, just be there for a second. Doesn't want to go through. He just wants to walk in and walk out. I'm not sure. It's a little difficult that. Eino mutalonu zeh. So it comes according to the Rambam that's an Isa for a goy to be in Eretz Yisrael. I feel a fisher, and that's the Rambam in Chos Avodah Zarah, Perek Yud, Halacha Vov, aber bizman sheyad Yisrael kifu aleim osalon That's the Minchas Chinuch. Yat Kifa. Ba'afilu Yoshev Yeshivas Arai. Oiver mimokom lemokom b'schoira. It's very temporary. Or we're just passing through for business. Lo yavo ba'atzenu. El ad she'ikabel olov sheva mitzvos shenitztavu b'nei noyach. Shenema lo yeshu b'altzecha afilu lefi shol. The Ravid is cholik in Perek Yud of Hilchos Avodah Zarah Halacha Vav, and he's of the opinion that the Isur is only Yeshivas Keva, and that's the mashmos of the core of Yeshvu, Yeshiva Keva, Yeshivas Keva. Now, here is the important part. It comes the Rambam, and you could have said in all the other mitzvahs, which the Isur is about kfira, you say if he's not Neived Avodah Zarah, everything's okay. However, in the lav of the yesh b'altzecha, the Ram is very clear that the lack of kfira is not enough. You need to be a ger toshav in order to live in Eretz Yisrael. Eino mutalano zeh of the goy even passing through ad she'ikabel olov sholavo avodah zarah. So you think maybe it's a separate tonight that it shouldn't be over the Zohar, and what I'm saying is ridiculous. But continue. V'oz yi'ef shelo lishkoin. V'zeh yikra ger toshav. It's not that he's not, that he's not over avodah zarah mitzias. It's more than that. He needs a Kabbalah that he shouldn't be over avodah zarah. And that, he says, is called ger toshav. V'oitzim bozeh shehu ger li'inyan she'emuta lishkon b'oretz levad. He's allowed to live in Eretz Yisrael, and without that, he's not a good ger toshav. And without that, he can't live in Eretz Yisrael. V'chein omu ezel ger toshav zeh shekibel olav sholav avodah zarah. We're not talking about Zayin Mitzvah at the moment. He just has to Mekabel. He's not over avodah zarah. So here, and the Rambam is very clear in Hilchos Yisui Bir, Perek Yudal Halacha Zayin, Ezel Ger Toshav, Ze goy shekibel olav sholav avodah zarah. I'm not getting into the difference of whether it's all Zayin Mitzvah or not. I'm interested in the next line at the moment. V'lama nikra shmo toshav lefi shemutar lonu lo yeshivo beinenu b'Eretz Yisrael. And if he's not toshav, get toshav, well, it's an isa, it's a lav of lo yeshu b'altzech. Interesting is the this issue about what the definition of ger toshav is 2 days in the Gemara Avodah Zarah. Samach Dalet Amud Beis. Meisvei ezehu ger toshav kol shekibel olav b'fnei gimel chaverim sholav avodah zarah. Diva Rebbe Meir. So one Tanataka says that the Shem get Toshav depends on a Kabbalah from over the Zohar. You don't need anything more. The Hachamim Oimrim call Shekibul of Sheva Mitzvahs Shekibul Aleim B'nei Noyach. I didn't know. I'm not getting involved. This is just at points of reading it. I found the Lashon amazing. He says, this again, this is not negated to us. The Chamoim call Shekibul of Sheva Mitzvahs Shekibul Aleim B'nei Noyach. B'nei Noyach of Makabel the Zayin Mitzvahs. They're Mitzuva Zayin Mitzvahs. So what does it mean? Shekibul Aleim. The Rambam here in Minyan HaMitzvos passes like a mayor, because he says, Ad shikabel olav shalol lavud avodah zarah v'oz yev shalol nishkoin v'zeh yikor get toshav. So get toshav is with one thing, just kabbalah shalol lavud avodah zarah. But Mishnah Torah, the Rambam passes like the Chachamim. Hilchos Isui Bia. Perek Yudala Lochazayin Ezel Get Toshav Ze Goy Shekibul of Shalavad Avodah Zarah Im Shara Mitzvah Shtabim Bnei Noyach V'loi Mal V'loi Toval Harizeh Mekabel Noisai V'hu Mechsidu Moisoilam. So that ger Toshav loitzim bezeh shu ger le'inyan sheyiyeh mutar lishkoin be'eretz Yisrael levad. And that's what we just read. The Ram Mishnah Torah, the exact same idea. V'chein omru ezel ger Toshav zeh shekibu alav shelo la'avoid avodah zarah. So then he says like this, then he continues. Ulam, he is getting interested. Oived avodah zarah lo yishkoin imonu. So that's oived avodah zarah lo yishkoin imonu. V'lo nimko lo nachlo. V'lo yimko lo nachlo. V'lo naskir. So we're not allowed to have the Oived Avodah Zarah, that who wasn't a ger Toshav, Yishkoin Imonu. Okay, that's okay. That's the lav of Lo Yesh Bartzech. V'lo nimko lo nacho, we're not allowed to sell something to him, even if he's not here. And we can't rent him something. Ubebeya bo lonu haperush loisite lohem chaniya bekalka. So the Ram quotes the loisechonim loisite lohem chaniya bekalka in the mitzvah liyeshu ba'atzecha. Ukva izboya mishpatei mitzvah zo b'sanhedrin u'avodah zarah. So let's take this one thing at a time. Let's see what's happening over here. The Mishnah of Avodah Zarah, Perek Aleph Mishnah Ches. Ein moichim lohem b'mechuba l'karka, avo moichu hu mishikotzeks. Reb Yehuda imem moichu hu loy amanas lofutz. Okay, good. Ein maskir lem batim be'eretz Yisrael, v'ein tzorach loy mesodos. So l'cheira, in Schiros, since the Ram quotes it over here in Minyan HaMitzvos, he's learning the Isa Schiris is a Deraisa de Geisa. It's a Deraisa. And that L'cheira would be supported not only the fact that he quotes it over here, he says, Uba'a lonu b'bei omer bola perush leisit. If what this perush leisit lahem chanoye bekalka is going back on the whole thing, I assume. And this idea of loy sitlam chanaya bekalka is the Ram Pirush Mishnayis also says the Pirush Makubal. Perik in Perik Aleph al Mishnah Ches, Yisoid is Isa Elu Hadvorim Oimle Yisale Loy Sechonim Uboa Kabbalah Loy Sitlam Chanoya Bekalka. לפי שזה נכנס בכלל לא יסכונן. ואומרי ואין צורך לא ימסודס, לפי שסודס יש שני עניונים, לאו לא יסכונן, and also the half-cough tumas and mice, and they're getting involved in the same. So this is a Pirush Makubal, and of both here he says it, and in Pirush HaMishnayos. Here is very strange, because the Rambam in Pirush HaMishnah passes Rabbi Yosi. The Mishnah says in Perek Aleph Mishnah Ches, Rabbi Yosi oimer be'eretz Yisrael maskim lehem batim avoloi sodos. So as maskim and batim, there's no way said the rice, there's only the rabbonim. Ubesuya moichel lehem batim, umaskim lehem sodos. Ubechutz la'aretz, moichel lehem elu ve'elu. And the Ram Pirush HaMishnah ba'aloch Rabbi Yosi. Ubetanai shiyaski liyisha echod or l'shnayim, whatever. Shalash ha'shchunas goyim. And the Rama passes like that in Hilchos Avodah Zarah, in Perek Yud Aloch Gimel. So, and according to Rabbi Yosi, it's mutter to be masculine batim. And the Isa scholars is certainly the Rabbanon for Bittul HaFrosh Chumas and Meises. So, L'cheira, the Ram over here disagrees with all what he says in other places, and holds the Isa Schiris that the rice doesn't pass Rabbi Yosi. And both he's saying that the rice of both in Pirush HaMishnah and Mishnah Torah, the Chayet of the Rabbanon. The question which we have to ask, and I think is the most, it seems like, we have no clue of what happened over here. Why in the world should the Ram quote Leisechonim, Leisita Lemchanaya Bekalka in the lav of Yeshu Bartzech, and not in the lav of Leisechonim? So a priori, and Mishnah Torah, he quotes it together with the lav of Leisechonim. So I'm just wondering whether the Rambam might categorize in Sefer HaMitzvos from a logical point of view, even though the text does not support it. And l'cheira, the chanoye bekalka is ki'ilu ageda deraisa for lo yeshu bartzech. And therefore the Ram quotes it over here. We find something similar. You remember the law of the Rambam quotes Lo yek koch vadosai, and he says this all is b'chlal the law of of uh, of uh, of the law of srita, which is very strange. Why is it put over here? The Rambam says both the Shnei Botei Dinim and the Machlekes is b'chlal the law of srita. So I would tell you, so what the Rambam is doing is categorizing according to conceptual categories, and there koirach is a problem which is machlekes, which goes together with srita and loisiskeidu. Here also, logically, chniya b'kalka is an issue get the deraisa for loisite v'lo yeshu bartzech. So this sounds okay, but this is not such a great proof. And I'll tell you why. You see, the Ram says in Shiur Ches, he says that Korach Vadosai, to say that it goes on Machlokes, that it's Ashara, because really in Shiur Ches, Korach Vadosai is not an Ashara, it's a Shlila. It just shouldn't be. But it's not that there's an Isa. So he says, saying that it's an Isa is a Teichachas. It's not real. So once a Teichachas is not real, so then you can use your mental prowess and decide this Isa, which Chazal are learning out, what category you put it on. But if you have a Pirush Makubal in the lab of Leisechonim, so Titel Hem Chanoya, the Kalka, so the Torah says, Ototis no lab Leisechonim. So how can the Ram say that Ki'ilu conceptually it's a Geder Deraisa for Leyesh Bartzech? So I'm going to quote it. It's clearly part of that. It's very hard to do that. Mishnah Torah, he certainly fell off this idea, and he quotes together with Leisechonim. The Ram says it's a Kabbalah, Pirush Makubal. It's very difficult. Okay. And Mirz Hashem, I guess, next week is a lav loisischaten, and the Rambam says a lot over here. But we have to understand every word. What's he introducing Chanoim Poigim by? What he wants the Kurz to be Kabbalah? What's the Malchus? And what's the Isa and who the Isa is on? Is there something special? Zayin Amim, Mirz Hashem, we'll discuss this and pick this up next week.